Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Board Masters with me, Chris Mullins, and tonight I want to talk about Chronicles of Drunagor, Age of Darkness, which is on GameFound at the moment, and is a game I have been and am still very, very excited about. It's a game that, for the first time in my short time in the hobby, I've really come across a game that where minis have almost been a cause of concern for the... Well, not a cause of concern, it's hard to word it. That the way they've treated the minis has actually damaged, certainly my view on the new content. And I think that's a view that's been echoed by a number of people. And I'll get into why. But obviously, introducing Chronicles of Drunagor, it's a game that has been on Kickstarter in the past and has started fulfilling in the last year or so. Obviously, very, very highly rated, 9.2 on Board Game Geek. Dungeon crawling with 3D terrain and incredible character system in terms of leveling up and powers, which if you watch Board Game Co like I do, you will know Alex absolutely loves, and that's the sort of thing I'm into as well. I mean, this is one of the new minis that has caused such consternation, and it is absolutely stunning, and it's massive. I mean, it's 25.5 centimeters tall, looks like it's almost as wide, and it's a hugely narrative campaign, and everything that I like with a board game, really. At the moment, I am backing for the reprint, because I don't feel like I can miss out on the core game. But let's look at the minis in particular. So this is the minis in the new one, and as you notice, it's in a box titled The Four Horsemen. So it is in a separate pack to the actual expansion that is driven this crowdfunding campaign. And as you can see, bosses will appear in half of the adventures, not only as final fights, so they're really pushing the fact that these miniatures are not just going to be ones that show up at one final fight in a scenario, then you beat them, then you never use the mini again. These are minis that come out the box regularly. They're gorgeous, they're massive, incredibly detailed, look absolutely wonderful. As you can see, compared to a standard mini there, they are very, very impressive. And there you go. You can see just the size and the scale of it. Now the issue comes, for me, if I can find it. Here we go. So in the actual expansion pledge, which is handily on the right hand side of the screen, so the $95 new content, the bosses in the new content are represented by these standees in a self-titled, well, not titled, but a game that describes itself historically as a miniatures based game. It has got the main enemies that appear in over half the scenarios in an expansion as standees. Now, if you want those fantastic minis, then it's going to cost you an extra $89 or so. Let's see, add-ons, new content. Yeah, the Four Horsemen, an extra $89 in order to just get the minis. And for me and many others, it's completely put me off backing the new content, to be honest, because I'm not willing to lay down, what is it, $184 on content that is effectively $95 worth plus 4 minis, no matter how big they are. I would much rather have seen minis that are a quarter of the size, so only 6, 7, 8 centimeters tall instead of 16 to 25 centimeters tall. I would much rather have seen those in a pledge at $105, the same pledge level as the reprint, $115. If the new content was $115 again, and it had 4 big miniatures, but not gargantuan miniatures as they like to portray, then I'd have been all over it. I'd have already backed it. But the way they've done it, it almost feels, and I'm sure it's not, I don't like attributing negative traits to anyone, but it feels like a cynical ploy that they could easily have done miniatures for that. But they went massive and over the top in a conscious effort to almost extract more money, and that they know if they put normal size minis instead of the standees, that would drop the number of backers for the $89 bot if they had an alternative option. And they're the only ones who I'm sure they've got countless amount of data. I'm sure a huge amount of people are backing these, and that I am probably in the minority of people who, annoyingly, the way my mind works is that I can't really, if I'm spending this sort of money on a miniatures game, I'm not using standees. And the fact that they've given me standees with the option of spending a significant amount of money more on miniatures feels dishonest and exploitative to me, if I'm being brutally honest. And that is why at the moment I'm not backing this new content, and that's a shame, because I would love to get hold of it because it looks amazing. And I can notice it's not a tiny minority of people, because they actually addressed this in an update. I think this was just before the campaign went live, where, as you can see, there's been some positive feedback on the Four Horsemen box, understandably, because the content looks stunning. But as they said, they designed the bosses for a reason. They believe it'll be an enormous plus for that the size will make the gameplay even more epic, and that having standees is to decrease the cost of the game and make it more affordable for everyone. Which is, it's applaudable that they want to make an affordable, easier entry level for the majority. But is that really true? I mean, again, I don't want to cast aspersions, but a game that was always likely to be hugely, hugely successful. I mean, and I'll stress that here, this campaign has been enormously successful. They're over $1,300 in 2 days, fraction over 2 days, and they could easily, and they still could. This is why I'm recording at 9:30 on the 22nd, with the aim of uploading this by 10 o'clock on the 22nd, to make sure I was up to date, in that they could easily change those standees to minis as a stretch goal. And I am fingers crossed that that's what they're going to do, and that they will find a compromise position and still offer this by all means, because there are so many people that are going to go for that Four Horseman box, and understandably, because those minis are absolutely stunning. And I mean, if you're a miniatures painter, you're going to have an absolute field day with those. But for those of us who, well, for me, I don't have the ability to paint. I would love to be able to, in which case I probably would have backed them. But as a non-painter, and as someone who, as much as I hate it in me, as someone who just, I won't use the standees. It's like, I mentioned in my Dinosaur Island review back before, I recorded before Christmas with Chris, if I had to use the pink Triceratops meeples for all the dinosaurs in that game and didn't have my son's dinosaur toy box to raid, I would never play that game again, because I hate those minis so much. And the same applies here. If I have to use those standees, I will just simply not back it. And I really hope, selfishly, and given that it was a sizable enough audience that they felt the need to address it in an update, I would think there is a decent number of people who feel a similar way, who, if these were miniatures, even if they were a third of the size of the ones in the Four Horsemen box, I imagine there's a lot of people who would instantly upgrade their pledge in the same way that I would, and go into it. And that is why, for the first time in my year or so in the hobby, as someone who, if you've seen my Kickstarter content or anything, you will know I am heavily sold by minis, heavily sold by the artwork. I spent 400 quid on ether fields, almost entirely based on the artwork and the theme and the miniatures, and I probably would have done the same here. And it's an interesting mindset thing. I mean, I guess I talked about it in the Kickstarter addiction with the FOMO thing. Had they just offered the new content as $185 with those 4 minis, would I feel the same? And I think I probably wouldn't, which is, again, a bizarre thing to think about, really, that if you charge me the full price and don't give me a cheaper option with standees, I'll probably happily pay it, but give me a cheaper option with standees and then ask me to pay more for the minis. And for some reason, in my head, the calculation that goes on does not fall in your favour, I'm afraid. But it is a fantastic looking game, a stunning looking game, a very popular, well-rated game that I'm very excited to be backing for the core content, for the reprint content, I should say. And fingers crossed they will find a stretch goal, because, I mean, as you can see, they are 2,600% funded, $1,300, 14 days to go, could well be topping 3 million, something like that, possibly even more. You would think they'd be able to find somewhere in the budget some minis to replace those standees, in which case I will be getting the Age of Darkness Apocalypse content as well. But that's it for this video, really. And again, not intended to be a particularly negative video against the game or against Creative Game Studio. I'm sure that it wasn't a cynical decision, and that they simply were trying to be flexible. And you can never please everyone all the time at the end of the day, and maybe on this occasion I'm just got to live with the fact that I fall into that bracket, as I am I'm the one group who aren't going to be satisfied with this, and I can make my peace with that and live with it. But that is basically it for my video on when miniatures can become a hindrance to a campaign. So thank you very much for watching. Look after yourself, stay safe, and have a good one. Thank you. Bye-bye now.